Ready? Good morning and welcome to the regular meeting of the Town of Bethlehem Industrial Development Agency. Welcome back to those who joined us at our annual meeting and the hardy souls who are here right on 8 o'clock for the audit committee meeting. Thank you for sticking with us. This is a regular meeting. We meet monthly, the fourth Wednesday of every month. We are always webcast, but I do want to stress that this is a large room and people are welcome to come in and listen to us in person, as well as watch us with your morning coffee. It's Wednesday, March 26th, and the first order of business is a call to order and determination of a quorum so that the agency can conduct its business for the regular meeting. And I will ask those in attendance, will go around the room.
Richard Cotlow, board member director.
Victoria Stores, board member and chair.
Matt Moses with Barclay Damon for the Bethlehem Energy Center.
Jackie Hope, member.
Georgette Steffens, Ultramarine member.
Victor Franco, board member.
Kate Hedgeman, agency counsel and executive director, and online.
Al Michaels, CFO.
Okay.
I note that we have 5 of 7 members. That constitutes a quorum. And therefore, at 8:21 on March 26th, I call this regular meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Al, for dialing in remotely. And thank you, Matt, for coming in from colder climes. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the February 26th regular meeting. Do we have any questions or additional notes?
The only thing I will say is, pending any further corrections, I will be posting an updated version with some corrections that were shared.
Okay.
In an effort to get the agenda posted on time, we sent out draft.
Mhm.
So I did get all of your comments, and the new version is posted in Bella's board and will be posted after the meeting.
And these are very slight changes.
Yeah,
very
there's
slight
nothing,
edits, nothing.
Yeah, commas, spaces.
Mhm. Okay. Are there any other questions or suggestions about the minutes of the February 26th meeting?
Just one thing, just want to make sure the record reflects that I did not second the motion
Yeah,
under new business.
Yeah.
Okay.
we got it.
Okay.
Dictated that all of our changes were incorporated.
Yeah, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that one got picked up.
Yep, got it.
Would anyone like to move to adopt the minutes?
So move.
Thank you, Dick. I'll second the motion. All in favor of adopting the minutes of the February 26th meeting as Kate has adjusted and are currently posted online?
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
And-
abstaining as well because I wasn't here.
Okay.
So we have 3. That's right, Joe, you attended video. So,
Well, that doesn't count.
Right.
yes, I know.
Oh,
So
So
we
he's
have 3
abstaining.
people. We don't have a quorum for adopting the minutes.
No, you have a quorum.
Oh, we
It's
only
just-
have
You
3
need
voting.
3.
It's
Okay,
So we're
President
thank you,
and-
Kate.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
We got it.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah.
The next item of business is the financial report. So this would be joint to the extent you want, Dick and Al Michaels.
Dick, I'll do it if you want, or do you want to do it?
No, be my guest.
Okay, you have the financial report through February 28th, 2025. On our statement of net assets, we have $1,873,425.36 in cash accounts. We also have fees receivable of $61,560.48. They have since been collected. And some prepaid expenses, our insurance, we paid that, so $43.75 of it is prepaid. So total current assets and total assets are $1,939,360.84. We have accrued expenses of $11,666.66, leaving us with net assets of $1,927,694.18. Income statement of revenue and expenses. Fee income, $130,640. PSEG, $35,198.48, giving us total income of $165,838.48. On our expenses, contractual expenses, $28,427.84. Business and Economic Development, 99,48,47. Our total expenses are 38,376,31, giving us ordinary income of 127,462,17. Add back our interest income, 808,77. We've got a net of 128,270,94. Of course, we receive a lot of our income in the first month of the year. So, it looks great, but it'll slowly change just a little bit unless we have some significant projects. Budget versus actual fee income, we're actually a little bit under budget simply because over the course of our budget year, we assume one project's going to close and 1/12 of that every month gets put in a year-to-date budget until we actually have a closing. There's no change. PSEG is a little bit above what we budgeted. And on our expense side, contractual expenses always run high the first few months because we pay the audit fee in February, and we're not going to pay that again until next February. Business and Economic Development is under, we're still spending money on the site mapping plan, and that'll level off during the course of the year. So comparison to budget, we're 19,330 ahead of what we budgeted, but it's early in the year. Are there any questions on the February financials?
I just have one comment. The chair has requested that we have a short meeting an April meeting for the finance. The only thing I request and the only real importance of the meeting, as far as I'm concerned, is if you have any projected needs for 2026 budget, and this you might want to touch base with Chris as the marketing head, that those you bring those, because I guess that would be the topic of conversation. In our wish list.
Yep.
So if you have anything that you think that the agency should spend for 2026 for discussion to put on the table, it'd be a nice time to present that.
Is the anticipation that or is the expectation, I guess, that the business development, like the site work stuff that we're doing, will that be done this year? And then is there a need for, what is the next step with that? Is there?
I was going to do that in my executive direction.
That would be the only thing that I would think, that maybe might be an item for 2026.
There shouldn't be any more expense other than the previously budgeted for CPL. But I think it would be marketing, to be honest with you, because we're going to get some public input and things like that. So that's where I see that, coming up for that. Yeah. I don't know, even after a presentation to the board of the results of that study, we have to contact the owners, things like that. So I don't know necessarily that we'll really know if there's anything that could potentially be developed probably until early 2026. We'll have a report, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the owners are up for, doing something. Right. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
Then next order of business, Kate, the legislative update.
Okay, so this was fun. I'm not going to go over every single bill that we're tracking, but there's been an awful lot introduced with regard to industrial development agencies in the legislature. My plan for this program too is on some of these, I feel really compelled that we should probably write letters in opposition or support. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that. This is just an intro today. We can talk about that, at subsequent meetings, and, we'll see if any of these really move out of committee, or how fast they move or don't move. But just going to highlight a few that I found, mostly things that I personally would think that are really not great, but you may have a different opinion. And the first one is there's an act to amend the general municipal law as it relates to fees charged by municipal industrial development agencies, making the same fees, if all the IDAs in Albany County would have to charge the same fees, including Albany County. So that you couldn't technically forum shop for cheaper fees and all of that. So that one, I'll reserve opinion on at this point, but I thought that that was important to highlight. The other big one, which I think is positive, but probably needs to be finessed a little bit, is the act to amend the general municipal law as it relates to the powers of industrial development agencies. And in this one, the summary is the bill would afford IDAs the ability to deploy tens of millions of dollars for economic development because they would do away with LDCs, local development corps, and give IDAs power to make loans and make grants, which we currently cannot. And usually because of the projects and the fees, we're the ones with the money, right?
Mhm.
And there's only certain things that we can really spend that money on, then we're restricted. So in general, I depending upon how this is done, the devil's always in the details. I think that could be groundbreaking. And even our IDA, I mean, what did we used to run on? $300,000 a year, and now we have close to 2 million. So, I think some of the larger IDAs too at the county level are sitting on millions that really could be deployed for things that, loans, lunch, yeah, not lunch, loans, grants, that kind of thing. So that one I'm going to watch pretty closely.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, it's long overdue, really.
You miss mine.
I missed yours.
Yeah.
I'm going through.
Well, I'm going in order.
Oh, see, I'm not highlighting all of them. I'm just highlighting the ones. Which one did you want to highlight?
I'm going to highlight the one that would be the death knell of our IDA.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the one I wanted to talk
School
about.
taxes.
The school,
If the schools,
Pretty shitty.
it's ridiculous. They have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, so there is on here that the school districts would be exempt from pilots. And so you couldn't, and here in Bethlehem, at least, the majority of our taxes are school district taxes. So you couldn't give an abatement on school taxes. I think in the work we've done with the school district on the GB2 PSEG project and really getting everyone's input, if half the IDAs would just sit down with other stakeholders, including the school district, before they handed them a pilot, I think it goes a long way to take care of that issue. It's more predictable for them. They'll know what their budget is. If there's a real problem, at least the IDA would know ahead of time and they could negotiate something. But
Or
that,
legislation's still out there about having school have.
yes, I'll get to that. Yep.
Because that would also solve that.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe at
If
the
a school
table
board
of
member was
discussion.
on our board, or a school person,
Yeah.
then they'd have the right to
Yeah.
run back and say,
Right. Or,
Yeah.
express concern, right?
this would put us out of business.
So,
I'm not a fan of that one. But.
yeah, John Dick, as I did, that the not allowing IDAs to implement pilots that affect school districts has been around. It's going to come around. I do want to mention that this is a piece of legislation that the New York State Economic Development Council, the IDA's professional and educational organization, has been keeping its eye on. And a lot of the work that they do tracking how our work generates net new taxes because the businesses wouldn't have come, the jobs that are created. They do a lot of those studies and analysis, and this is definitely front and center. Periodically, they ask for support from organizations. And hearing the concern here this morning, when we get that, Kate and I will talk about whether there's something for this board would be comfortable with.
Do we know who the sponsors are?
Yeah, I have all of that. I just really pared this down because this was a huge
Is it a
agenda.
downstate person?
For which one?
The school bill.
Yes, a lot of it is coming out of Westchester, New York City area. Yeah, but the cost to educate students obviously is very high, and we don't know yet what's going to happen with federal funding for that. So I think it's all, you know.
Take a little bit out of the 380 billion that we're sending to the feds. You know?
Yeah.
Keep it in the state. My opinion.
So when I get to the end of the report, I will mention where I think we go from here. But let me just finish getting through this. The other one I found interesting is, most of you have probably heard of insider trading when it comes to stocks and financial
What's that?
markets and things. Well, there's an act to amend the penal law in relation to unlawful dealing in real property, which is interesting. So the act would provide that a person is dealing unlawfully in real property if they use material government information to purchase or sell real property based on expected changes in value. So if you're going to attract, a big project, or you're going to put a big project somewhere probably that isn't going to be good for that area, someone who was sitting on a board or part of a confidential discussion might have information where the IDA knows there's a project coming in, but the public doesn't, and they use that information to buy the property next door or something like that. So I'm interested to see where this one goes. Like, I get it, but I think it's more of an ethics issue. I mean, this would make it's penal. It would make it probably a misdemeanor or something. So that was an interesting one. Let's see, that might be it for my highlights. Nope. Oh, another interesting one, an act to amend the general municipal law for allowing the examination of IDAs and nonprofit corporations by county comptrollers. So another layer of regulation for IDAs. The other bill that we were just talking about relates to changes for the General Municipal Law 859A, requiring that all industrial development agencies have at least one representative from a local labor union. That affected school districts and state elected officials receive notice of meetings, that agendas are published in advance, and the school districts receive IDA annual reports. I'm someone that likes transparency and stakeholder involvement, so this one doesn't bother me at all. I think that it's a good way to keep everyone informed, because a lot of times when there's a problem, it's like, well, I didn't see that. Well, it's been posted and for 2 years now on the IDA website, and there's a recording and all of that. But I think if we're required to give reports, like affirmatively send one, that probably is more helpful than not. But that's just my thought on that. The other big one is prevailing wage, and projects over a certain amount have to pay prevailing wage. That was reintroduced as well. There is one that will be interesting.
Can I ask? It's a question I asked before, with prevailing wage, when that gets introduced and I didn't read it, do we have an obligation to audit our IDA project to make sure that they are in compliance?
You would, yes, but the projects are huge.
Okay,
Like,
so
we don't necessarily.
It's still big ones.
Yeah.
So we won't have, unless we have some special gigantic that we
Right.
approve.
Right.
But once that happens, we'd have to build into our
Process, yeah.
to audit the prevailing wage.
Yeah, because we would have to, probably at the end of the year, and it might even, that would be a high expectation that they would change the Paris report and capture it there, but it would seem to me that would be the proper place to capture it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus that it would only be prospective.
Yeah.
If you had a project that was currently ongoing.
Oh, no, I understand that, but
Yeah.
we don't have any that big. But, well, I
Right.
don't know, PSAG,
No, it's not that big.
82 million, no,
Well, it's not the investment, it's
bonding?
it's all of that. It depends, yeah.
So what's the statute?
Well, right now, I think it's still at 10 million, but don't quote me on that
Minimum?
because it might have changed. Yeah,
Minimum
so
benefit.
anything under 10 million, you wouldn't have to pay
Right.
prevailing wage.
Okay. So they're trying again.
Right, because I don't think it passed the last session.
Last time it was 100%, right?
Right, I think so.
And now they're
First it
saying-
started at 5 and then they went to 10 and then
Okay.
in some sort of an amendment, I thought.
Okay.
Um,
But that's in total benefit. That's not necessarily in the project size.
Right, it's the benefit, not the technically
total
the
project.
investment
Or
per
10 million
se.
in benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So that's a huge. project.
huge. For here.
Yeah.
When you get into multifamily housing, it's not that much.
But I live in California.
The, one of the other ones I think that's very interesting, that I'm sure continues to be an area where people butt heads, relates to amending the general municipal law, disallowing county industrial development agencies from offering incentives in municipalities that have their own IDA. So it's opposite of the bill that tried to consolidate
Yeah.
IDAs.
That's fine.
So, yeah. Okay, so those were the highlights. There's other there's other bills obviously in there. We are tracking and looking for new introductions as well, so we probably will be updating this throughout the year, and change the status, at least in the status column, so you can kind of see where it is. I think going forward, you can do it as a board, or you could have a committee look at this. But I think in some instances, you might want to consider, taking some sort of action by written comment or letters on certain bills. I don't know, I know New York State EDC does track the bills themselves, but normally they'll put in their own support. But I think, and sometimes even the County of Albany will ask for support on something if it's something that they've flagged. But some of these, I just feel compelled that, especially the one that would give us more powers, I think that is something that's long overdue. So we don't have to comment on everyone, but I think we should bring this back when the full board is present and decide where you want to go on all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm compelled just to state for the record that any letter in opposition or support of any state legislation, I'll be recusing myself from that. So I just want to state that.
Yes, you have a very good reason.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with you about the potential expansion of IDA responsibilities, and certainly this is something that I would support the board discussing, particularly in light of the formation of a marketing committee and the more active efforts that we have begun to engage in as a real partner to the town, which doesn't otherwise have a very, very active economic development arm. So I think it's certainly timely to discuss that at the next meeting or so.
Okay. So that's it for the legislative report. I do have just a quick update. I didn't put a full executive director report in here because we have so much to get through, but Rob, Leslie, and I end up hiring someone for the economic development position, which is great. She's great. Her name is Brienne, and she hopefully will be at our next meeting. She doesn't start till next week. We're excited about that. I think she's got a lot to bring to the table, and she has a business development background as well. So more to come on that.
That's great news.
Yes, it is. It was worth waiting for the right candidate.
So I did have a question about that role. How does it relate to the board? Because it seems like it's our responsibility, or we're engaged in a responsibility. Does the IDA pay for that position? Do we manage this position?
Sure. So we do pay the town. I forget what it is, but we have a agreement to share an employee with the town. And they are not only the liaison between the IDA and Rob's office, the Economic Development Office, and the Supervisor's Office, but they're usually the folks that take the first call on a project. They also compile a list of properties available, commercial properties in IDA, and we have them on the website. they're also going to be involved with the marketing committee and with the board. Those are the types of things. It's probably, if it's 2 hours a week, it's roughly probably, and if we have a project going on, it might be 2 to 5 hours a week, but it's not real significant. But yeah, we pay the town for that.
But we have no personal oversight, that we're not dealing with their
No, I do.
HR stuff.
Oh, no, they're hired through the town and we have a management or a shared municipal employee agreement.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, as far as IDA time, we supervise that.
There's a set of responsibilities that are in our service contract with the town, which has been somewhat suspended since we haven't had that employee. So we'll be bringing that back up so the full board can see it and get a refresher. And there's a list of responsibilities, everything that Kate talked about, business visits, business retention and expansion, really being a front face for the town.
Yep.
We had an outstanding person in there for a couple of years, and he left to go to the Center for Economic Growth. It's wonderful news that you found a quality candidate to come in.
Yep, she's a town resident, has 4 kids, 1 in the school district, a couple in college at SUNY, so. Anything else?
I had another question. I forgot about it though.
Okay.
But remember.
All right. Okay. All right, so that's it for me. I'll turn it over to
Yeah, please, Victor.
All right, so the governance committee issued the board evaluation performance kind of like survey, as well as that for the executive director. Included in the meeting package today is the results of the board performance evaluation. So just highlighting kind of like the lows and the highs. The high is, what's good is that nobody disagreed somewhat or even disagreed on any of the questions that were raised. Another good point is that we had 5 different categories that everybody had an agreement with, that we actually do, in terms of the board members having shared understanding of the mission or the purpose of the authority, comprehending their roles, and then decisions made are arrived through independent judgment, knowledgeable about the authority's programs, as well as meets in to review and approve all documents prior. On the low side, something that maybe we might want to work towards in the future is that we had 2 categories where we had 4 members that were in agreement, and then 2 said they somewhat agree. And these criteria were the policies, practices, decisions of the board are always consistent with the mission. And then also the second one was the board exercises appropriate oversight of the CEO and other executive staff. Thank you for everybody who participated. And that concludes the evaluation for 2024.
Any questions or comments for Victor?
I guess looking at it, trying to figure out the one where we only have 1 who strongly agrees and we have 5 who only somewhat agree, right? Trying to figure out how we, what are our goals, right? I think some of it is because it's project based, right? You are sort of at the mercy of what projects come in, but hopefully I think with the new, with the work the consultants are doing, and then with the marketing committee, I think it'll be a little bit easier to set some goals there because we'll understand how many properties we're really looking at, what we're trying to market. And then, gosh, if we were able to use some of our money for loans and grants, I mean, that would really also change what some of those goals would be. So it's hard, right? Like some of it's a moving target because you're at the mercy of the economy and, everything that's going on right now. But
usually when I see something like this and then I notice the key terms, performance goals, there's a disconnect between did you pull out last year's performance measures and goals that you all approved and look at those, because we
Yeah.
do have some, and then do we meet them? I know you saw them because you were reviewing all of that. So, I think when we get to that here, we need to look at it and see if we want to add anything.
I would have, when I saw that question, I probably would have answered NA. Okay, but that wasn't a criteria.
Mm,
Because I think, we do everything we can do within the parameters that we can do it, but there really isn't, you don't want to be negative. But I would have answered that NA. But I think, in other words, I think it's a bad question.
Yeah, that's fair, how it's
It-
based on what
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and just so
fair.
you know, I mean, we did have one recipient not answer a question. So that's what left it blank, and by default, that would be categorized as an NA.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're continuing to go counterclockwise.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn, Georgette.
Okay. So the audit committee met right before the board meeting where we reviewed, and so everyone has a copy of the audit. There really was, as always, right? No deficiencies, no items of concern, nothing really of note in the report. The policies and separation of duties, segregation of duties, and all of those are working really well. We, while I think our total revenue is down a little bit and our expenses were up, we still did increase our net position by over $130,000 year over year. And any of the expenses, they were all things that we as a board had approved. Our economic development project, hi, how are you? Our insurance, those kind of things. So they were things that the board was aware of and had approved. I don't really have anything else of note. Was there something that I missed that we covered in that meeting? So the audit committee has recommended accepting the draft audit for approval at the board meeting today. Does anyone have any questions about the audit or? All right, so I'm happy to make the motion to approve the draft audit as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the draft audit?
Aye.
Any abstaining? I note that another member, Ted Barbieri, has just arrived eligible to vote, so that brings us to 6 voting members and unanimous approval of the motion to accept the audit.
I don't, Richard, you just might want to mention, maybe you did and I missed it,
Yeah.
that the auditor was here today.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yeah. So
and
the
present-
auditor reviewed, went in detail. We were
Yeah.
able to ask any questions if we had them, which we didn't. And he said he had no troubles with management of getting any of the information and expressed no concern whatsoever. Yeah.
And a separate video and agenda for the audit committee is also available on the website. Okay.
I think that's it.
Yep. And just going through the packet, the Paris report is included in the audit, so it's not separately, it is reproduced here twice. So that's fun.
Okay.
Kate, mission statement?
Yes, new business. So as part of our annual housekeeping and requirements for the authority's budget office, the first item to review is the mission statement and performance measures. This is a document that we're required to review and update every year. And we started to talk, I think, a little bit about it previously, a few minutes ago with regard to measurement goals. So I've updated the goals that we use on an annual basis, to the extent that we had some input from Victor and from others. So I guess I would just say, is there anything that you'd like to add or discuss or questions before we approve this?
Don't have any.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll look for a motion to approve the
So
mission
moved.
statement.
Second.
All in favor of approving the mission statement and performance measures?
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays?
The one thing I would just say that I forgot, Victor, I didn't make any changes to the mission statement because we'd have to have a whole resolution for that. So that's why it's not there, just so you know.
No problem.
We
Is
can
that-
do it later if we, I think it should come out of governance if we
Sure.
want to, but I couldn't do it now.
Anyone want to change their vote based on Kate's late breaking information? Yeah, okay, the resolution still passes unanimously. Okay, internal controls, still with you, Kate.
Okay,
As a matter of fact, the whole bunch is with you.
yes,
I can just go out for coffee
okay.
on my tab.
Right.
So in the context of the audit, we did discuss not only at the audit committee meeting, but just a few minutes ago with our approval of the audit, that our internal controls were tested by the auditors, and on a regular basis, Al, myself, and at least Dick are part of that whole system of checks and balances. So this is an annual document that we have to do for the authority's budget office internally here. And we also, we always file a copy of our audit as well so they can see, what the auditors considered. So I updated this a little bit from last year, but there's not many changes for this from last year. So any questions, comments? Okay, so
All
we'll
right.
entertain a vote
So-
for that one.
Do you have a motion to approve the assessment of internal controls?
Moved.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Georgette. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining or nays? Great. Approval passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, approval of operations and accomplishments. This is another report that we have to submit to the ABO. Al usually weighs in on the financial highlights and goals, and the numbers that you received here are provided by him for this year. The net position increased by 132,358, and as compared to 2023, I think. But anyway, and we had expenses decrease this year by 63,894. Economic development goals, one of which was to hire someone for the economic development position, which we just did. So we've accomplished that one already before we even approved this. We entered into a contract with CPL for the industrial site study, which is still in progress, and hopefully the next one or two meetings we'll be getting a bigger update about that. We did not take any new projects on last year in 2024. We did hire a website developer. We raised our profile with local economic development agencies. One thing that I think was really positive, we had at least 4 or 5 members attend the New York State Economic Development Council meeting with me, and we probably had the most IDA members there, which was fabulous. And Ja was on one of the panels, so that's always nice to see. Agency board and management goals, going back to the measurement report that you approved at last year. We did some training on proper use of executive session. We reviewed the roles of the committees. The governance committee is now meeting on a regular basis to look over the policies and procedures of the organization. And we did issue an RFP for an economic impact analysis. So that's a quick summary of the financial highlights and goals for last year.
Good job.
Any thoughts, corrections?
Okay, so do we want individual motions for items 5, 6, and 7, or just accept a motion to approve the operations and accomplishments and then move on to Paris?
Let's have Al, if you would, I don't know, Al, if you want to go over the Paris report, just the highlights, and then we can just do the resolution. That's fine.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, you should have your copy of the Paris report. And, you know, in it, it's the same report every year. The first couple of pages, we talk about our management and our compliance with all the appropriate regulations. We attach our measurement reports and our missions and accomplishments, and we refer to the website where those things will be posted. So anybody looking at the Paris report could then use that website reference and then go back and find the appropriate report. We also attach it so the OSC people can do it. But we try to make sure that all the items referenced on the Paris report have attachments that and references to our website where they can find it in a different format. The next couple of pages of the Paris report are generally, the staff and the board of directors. The Paris report is interesting. Kate and I are staff, but we have no compensation shown on that report because we reported elsewhere in a separate filing as a procurement. And every year somebody will question that. What do you mean you guys don't get paid? Well, we get paid a little bit, but it's reported as a procurement. And then the staff people, of course, are the board members are all reported. We do have, I did make that change that Victor is noted as also having a state appointment as well. The next part of the Paris report is the summary financial information, which ties back to our financial statements in format. We also have the statement of the outstanding bonds that we have on projects going back a few years. And we talk about our real property report. We don't have any. Our personal property report, we don't have any. We didn't have any dispositions of any of that stuff. And then the last portion is the projects. And we report each project. We report, the taxes that would have been owed on the project, and then we actually show the pilots. And that I get all those property tax bills from the controller's office, usually towards the end of October, after the school tax bills have gone out. So those calculations all tie back to actual tax bills that are issued by the town. And of course, we have one of the unique IDAs in that we have negative benefits because the amount that the PSCG is assessed for, I wouldn't say arbitrarily, but an agreed upon assessed value, the actual amounts of their pilots is in excess of what their actual taxes. That's a unique issue. I've never seen that in any other deals, but I don't know how many towns have power plants in their town either. So, but other than that, it's pretty much the same report every year. The projects get rolled forward every year. We lost a few of the projects that were, in Vista, they aged out, which is a good thing. That means they're back fully on the tax rolls. And so I don't know if anybody had any questions. I know Victor sent me an email, and I made an edit to the report that's going to get filed. I don't know if anybody had any other edits or information that they.
All the projects reported sent their report to us with jobs.
Yes. Yeah. And we send them out right at the beginning and end of the year, and they usually come in pretty quick. And there's no real surprises in it. I mean, In the past, we had some projects that the numbers will fluctuate based on different aspects of the business, but these are pretty straightforward.
All right.
We used to have to fight a little bit to get the ShopRite one back in the day, and then debate what the jobs were, but that's no longer an issue.
All right, when you get a chance, can you just send me copies of those for the document retention? Thank you.
I
Is there
have
a
all,
signature page on the Paris report or just get
No, it's
submitted?
an e-signature, so you're checking a box.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's when this meeting is, assuming this report is approved, we've already approved the audit and the measurement report and the operations and accomplishments. I'll print out all of those, attach the appropriate documents, double check, triple check, and then when I click, I certify it. That's one of my roles. And then when I'll print a copy of the report, it'll say on the date it's submitted and it's the date certified. And then I send a PDF of that to Factoring Company, and they attach an actual copy of the certified parish report to our audit. That's when we get the bound copies. But I always save that PDF copy because after we file the parish report, the state has employees that review these at the state controller's office, and if they have any questions and anything is modified, they'll open it up and I go in and modify it. But then when I certify it again, it's after March 31st. And, somebody not knowing would say, hey, they didn't do anything till April 8th. But we always file on time, and I always have a PDF copy of that March filing. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Al. Any other questions, or shall we move on to the resolution to approve the annual reports?
so
Okay, moving on. Kate.
Oh, I need to get a motion for the resolution.
Okay, so the resolution is simply approving everything. We'll note that Chris is an excused absence, so that in the final. So you move the resolution. I missed the second. Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Who moved it?
Georgette.
Yeah,
Who's the first?
Dick.
Okay.
Yeah. Georgette, second. All in favor of the resolution approving? Aye. Any abstentions or nays? All right, the resolution to approve all of the annual reports passes unanimously with 6 members present and 1 excused absence. And that brings us to the application for a pilot agreement. We are trying to shift out of respect for the name of the applicant. We have long called this applicant PSEG. They have a different name, different ownership, and we're really trying to shift it.
Be called by their official name.
But, as we begin, we've just received this application and members will be invited to review it. And I really want to start by thanking Kate, who has done an incredible job with contact and conversations and bringing people together internally and with the applicant and council is really getting to the point where we have an application for a complex and important project that coming before the board. I will turn the floor over to you to tell the board members what we're seeing today.
Sure. So just to recap, because I know for some of you, this is really your first project here and the history of this. We currently have the extension in place from the former, we actually had 2 extensions for the former PSEG site, but now owned by, let me get it right, GB2 New York LLC. So you might recall, and if you don't, I'm just going to go over it. Last year or the year before, we came up with and adopted our new policy for financial assistance. And as part of that, we put in place a procedure for reviewing applications and approving those. So there's usually 4 meetings unless, there's a reason why we don't need 4, then it could move faster than that. So the first one is to accept the application, for first look, first review, and then a vote really to move forward to get the economic cost benefit analysis, potentially put on a public hearing that we would need to do to sort of tee this all up for the second and third meetings where you would review, those two things and then ultimately make a decision on the approval of the pilot. So I just wanted to kind of go over that. That's what you approved in your procedure. And I know Giles wasn't here for that. So I just wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed on, how we're going to work through this. So what you have before you today is technically our application that is filled out to the best of the applicant's ability. In addition to that, there's a pilot term sheet, which represents the proposal of the applicant and was initially reviewed by myself, Victoria, and Chris Welsh. And I know early on too, Georgette was involved in early discussions about potentially doing a new pilot as opposed to continuing the extensions. We also met with representatives from the school district and the town comptroller's office to get their input on what potentially this pilot could look like. And, there's a couple of interesting factors about this project. First being that with New York's requirements for clean energy, the 2030 date is looming out there. At this point, it looks, impossible that we'd be able to meet that, but we just don't know. So that was sort of in the backdrop here and drove a lot of the discussions. And, we still don't. Anything could really happen. And there's also, a permit involved with this particular project that could get renewed, not renewed. We just don't know. So a lot of that, it factors into this initial term sheet. I think the highlights are it does fall into our 12-year pilot. We have 10-year pilots and we have 12-year pilots. It is going to be a deviation, really, what they call a deviation, which is also defined in our policy. It's also, if you look at the table that's attached, that's the next document that's attached. There's two potential, and I know we discussed some of this briefly in various meetings, but there's a potential for either a full upgrade or just maintenance, planned maintenance for the plant so that it can stay online. And we're not, the applicant isn't sure, at least right now, which way that's going to go. We might know by the time we are in a position to approve it, we might not. So it might be drafted with a either or, and that's why there's two tables attached. One is for the maintenance and one is for the upgrade. If anybody needs a hard copy, I have extra here if you want to see that. So I think, I'll open it for discussion and questions, and I know you might have some things to add, but right now we're just looking at it as an initial application. And then when you're finished with your discussion, you would vote to move it forward in the process to get the economic development study and the public hearing.
And to put some parameters around the discussion, we have counsel for the applicant here. I keep wanting to call you Matt Damon because it's Barclay Damon, and I hope you take that as a compliment.
Do you get that a lot?
No, that would be nice.
Yeah, we'll try not to leave you on Mars. I think that was his last big one. So as Kate explained, this is the initial application, and really what I'm hoping the board can get comfortable with today, and it's up to you, is, okay, the application is clean, it fairly describes the project. The terms we're asked to look at, we're going to look into more deeply. There were a lot of discussions about the pilot itself. And so I'm saying, okay, just agree, the limit of what you will be asked to do today is agree to move it forward, not to agree to a decision, not agree to the terms or the pilot, just to agree to do additional analyses. And then there's a separate step we would engage, as we've discussed before, an economic impact consultant who will also look at some of the financial aspects, the fiscal aspects, and that firm would then be engaged to support us as an objective third party. So we're really, based on what we're seeing right now, on what Kate has described, on questions you may ask, does this merit moving forward with our analysis is all we're going to ask.
What did you say, Dave?
Now I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First, thank you. I'm really gung-ho about the project. So the questions I have nothing to do with looking forward on the project, but for clarification, I know how much money is requested in the application. Hopefully when we get the final, we'll have a breakdown as to what the purpose of the project funds are going to be, a budget. You know, $82 million, we should get a breakdown. And apropos to that, I think that since I don't know what the $82 million is, right now there's no request for sales tax. But when you do a project, there most likely will be certain expenses that may not qualify, that may be sales taxable. So I think maybe the CFO might look at that and say, okay, of the $82 million, there's going to be $5 million of administrative costs that perhaps might have a sales tax aspect, and put that in the application. I just think that maybe, unless 82 million, the project's going to be 100 million. And you with me on that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if there is a sales tax component, maybe the CFO should look at that. And the other question I have, which might be a little controversial, can we have a breakdown of the pay of the employees that reside in the town? Because it just seems to me that there's too many people for that plant and too much payroll. So it seems to me that there might be part of those 85 employees and whatever number it is, I don't have it in front of me, that don't reside here in the town. Because if you do the arithmetic, there's a lot of salary in there. So it could be less, and it's not going to impact my vote, but I think it's for disclosure, we should know that. Those are my points.
Yeah, well, that last point especially is something that we would expect to come out in the economic impact analysis.
Okay, but you know the application is, if you do the arithmetic, it's like, I want to work there.
Yeah, I have a new job.
Well, I think that they're definitely, it meets our mission of high paying, high quality jobs for sure. We had the opportunity to tour the facility and, a lot of the conversation.
It's a lot of money.
But I mean, they also have very technical skill sets,
Okay.
the employees that are there.
Average.
Average.
Yeah.
Okay, we should know that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but I think these are high quality jobs. I mean, these are not,
Sure.
you have to have certain skill sets and education and other things. And one of the things that
Not
was
divorce.
also expressed when we were there was that a lot of the construction components or the contractors that they use are local. And so that was also, beyond just the employees, it's the additional economic impact to the companies, both in the town of Bethlehem and in the region. So to me, I'm in favor to move it forward to the next phase. It is a significant investment to keep the facility moving forward, running, and would have a big impact if it stopped running.
Agreed.
So just for the record too, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the major maintenance project is $25 to $35 million in investment, and the upgrade is up to $54 million.
54.
You had mentioned 80.
I
so
think I memorized it. I didn't have it.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing
No.
something.
No, I did.
That's right. The inducement, if we do get to a point of approval, would be for that first phase of this investment in the facility, the 25 to 35 million, which is intended to make the plant more efficient and extend its operating life to try to cover as much ground between here and when fossil-fired facilities are required to shut down in the state. So that's the initial objection here, or objective here. The second phase of the project would be this upgrade, which would add output to the facility And that is a much more expensive, up to $54 million investment. And if the company decides to move forward with that, that would increase the pilot payments over the 12-year period from $44 million to 52. So an $8 million increase in total payments under the proposal. So that's the thought. Both of those investments would need to be wrapped in some sort of certainty, and that's why the pilot proposal. Without that, it makes it very difficult for the company to choose to put its money into this facility or one of its other facilities around the country. So I think that's important, but that's what the IDA did in 2002, right? It wrapped this plant and to induce that initial investment to have it built with a long-term pilot. That initial plant is aging and is in need of that maintenance to move forward. So that's the framework we're dealing with here. And to answer the question on sales tax, that is something we will be looking at twice. We've already looked at it. Most of this spend, it will be on production equipment and orientation, which has a statutory exemption for both the purchase and the labor to install it. So, but we'll take that back and ensure that we're not missing out on potential benefit that could be avoided if the idea were to support it. And then finally, as the breakdown of spend and employees, I do think that will be part of this interaction we have on the cost benefit analysis. If we can get this application accepted today to green light that process and allow us to move forward with that more detailed dialogue.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. The other highlights, I mean, that you all have the term sheet, but the IDA has the project fee, which will be fixed at $125,000 per year for the entire term, which is the 12 years. And we also did talk about the performance payments, where I know some of you kind of came in the middle of all of this, but in general, when the plant would perform, and especially over a certain, I think it was 80% or something,
Yep.
They had negotiated in the previous pilot, more money would kick in for the pilot payment, and also would raise the IDA's fees because it was based on that. So it's still there, but we are capping that at $100,000 for each 1% increase. So it makes it more certain. Again, that's the whole point, is the certainty, so that the costs are known, or at least close to known for the most part. And there's no surprises, as there was this time for, I think in the 20 years, it only went over that threshold once.
Just
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
That resulted in $810,000 in additional payment to the tax jurisdictions, which is not a small amount, but it was unbudgeted for because it had never been hit. And so what we're intending to do as part of this proposal, just to clarify those rules, the company very much wants to have a we win, you win type relationship, and that's why it is retained. But the point of it is to permit better budgeting around that.
Hey, Kate.
Sure.
So just I'm for this too, for a lot of the reasons that Georgette was saying. It makes sense to get certainty to the business and give certainty to the school district. So in terms of the pilot payment schedule, so I see the school district payments on the, since this is the first application I'm voting for as a board member, or moving, move through the process. On the town and county pilot payment piece, we started at $944,000. Is that just going direct to town? Is it split between town and county?
Which one are you?
So I'm just looking at the major maintenance, starting at,
Okay.
at the small one. Because what,
So-
you just covered our fees, fine.
Sure.
I'm just trying to figure out what the, applicant is paying to the town.
Right. So on the major maintenance, it's the second to last column on
Yeah.
the right. That would be the 944. That's the town's portion.
Yeah, okay,
And then there's the school district's portion, which is always very large. We pay
Right.
more school district taxes even as taxpayers.
Yeah.
So it's an 80-20 split.
okay,
So the school
School district
district
and
gets
town.
the, yep,
okay.
It's town
Um,
and county. I mean,
yeah. And then,
Huh?
answer your question, it's town and county split that.
Right, what's the percentage between the
So-
two?
right.
I guess
So
that's
there's
next.
also special district taxes that are part of the town's portion.
Okay,
I'm not recalling what
Want
off
me
the
to do
top.
this one?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not recalling off the top of my head exactly what it was.
Wouldn't it be the
but
same as on your,
Yep.
on your tax bill?
Okay,
No,
No.
so,
we've had a lot of talk with the town controller and John McPhillip, because this is Bethlehem Central School District. If it were in RCS, we would have had intense conversations with their controller. The 2002 pilot provided for a single fixed payment. The schedule was set in advance, and it was divided absolutely 80-20 between the school district and the town. In effect, the school district would take its share and pay the library, because the library is on the school district tax. So the school district took on the responsibility for the library obligation, and the facility did not directly pay the library. The town received the payment annually, and it took its share. Mike Cohen could explain better, generally according to what the pro rata would be between the town and the county. And the town, the fixed payment to the town was held in the town. It was sent, a portion was sent to the county, and then a portion was sent to the special districts, the fire, the sewer, that applied to the parcel.
and that fluctuates, like I couldn't
Depending
tell
on the
you
year,
right
yeah.
now,
Mhm.
like it's
Right.
X.
Yep,
So,
and this was a special agreement, and we can talk
Okay.
about it more, because ordinarily special districts are excluded from a pilot agreement. In this case, the discussions that we've had, including with the taxing jurisdictions, is to retain the original structure. And so what you actually see, if you get out a calculator with Schedule A, is that it is not an exact 80-20 split, because the town has a responsibility for making payments to the special districts, and special district taxes are not subject to the New York State tax revenue cap. And they've been rising significantly. This schedule reflects an additional $500,000 paid to the town over time, so that the town is not expected to
absorb the
have to absorb that.
the
So you-
rising special.
the
district.
rising
Right.
special district, a certain amount of rise is built into it, but if they continue to rise in an extraordinary way,
Yeah.
then, so when you see the Schedule A, that's, it's divided a little bit unevenly.
Yeah.
The payments are the payments. If you were to look at Schedule B, that's just strict 80-20. That's what happens if the upgrade is applied. We really focused most on what we most expected was going to happen, which is that the maintenance would be done to keep the facility going with our assistance.
I would just also add that this schedule replaces the one-year extension that we put in place at the end of last year. And it has an uptick in payment from 4.6 million to 4.7 and change, some of which is split, as Victoria describes.
Thank you. Right, so no new infrastructure, we don't have to put any new roads in, we already have that, which is great.
No, it's just
Yeah,
simply,
it's just straight on that. Did it come up during the tour at all, sort of how, needs with respect to fire or anything like that? I mean,
We didn't, I don't remember
Yeah.
talking about,
they're not consuming additional services.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, it's all existing based on
right,
current usage, right? So
Right.
there's no additional
right.
need from, other than funding with, that makes sense.
And the town's planning director, Rob Leslie, has also been
Mhm.
aware and in the loop,
Cool.
as even before we came to bring it to the board.
I just have one more question about sort of the how this fits into the grid energy supply regionally.
Mhm.
I mean, how much, so what other suppliers are there? Is this, I guess, I'm curious how this plant in particular fits into the energy needs of the region. I assume it's not primarily going only towards residences and businesses here. I know Selco for the microgrid, sort of like, how does it fit into the energy needs of the region?
Yeah, I don't know that there's an easy answer to that one.
Sure.
This plant was constructed to replace the old Albany steam station, so it's
Okay.
kind of just replaced megawatts that were owned by Niagara Mohawk at the time with PSEG megawatts. And so this company has, since taking ownership a few years ago, Alphagen, has tried to make enhancements in the facility to drive up its output. Those megawatts, as gas-fired megawatts, really just are injected into the grid, and they go wherever the demand is, and what's not supplied by whatever renewable supply might be out there, or the nuclear plant energy. I don't know that makes its way this far east, but I don't think these megawatts go to New York City, for example. I think they are supplying the greater capital region, and the point about the legislation with the climate legislation is that if that remains on schedule and fossil-fired units are to be shut down by 2040, those will have to be replaced with something. And I think there's a lot of question marks around whether that's feasible, and gas-fired generation being the next most clean form of generation next to renewables. And this is a pretty efficient plant, so I think it's a good one there. So I think plants like this are going to be around for a while. I don't know how long, depending on how. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. You said Albany Steam. Is that the Answers plant that's in downtown?
No, Albany Steam Station was on this site.
It was on the site. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right. So there was
yeah,
something
so
there before.
It was a coal-fired plant.
Okay.
So, relative to this, much bigger polluter and all
Okay.
that, so.
The
this is
cost
taking it on.
benefit analysis too, will probably take a look at
Sure.
what the contribution of the plant is to the electrical
Yeah.
grid. I would, expect to see that. But I made a note because, I think that's an important part of the economic development piece of ultimately approving the pilot.
So I was curious about the size of this plant and its contribution to the grid compared with especially solar, which of course, many people are pushing very hard for, especially at the state level. And I happen to know that if a municipality is considering awarding a pilot to solar, which is not on the table in front of us, the state has actually established a method for calculating what the taxes would be and all of that. And they have a workbook and you can go online. And so the state is very much in favor of, local solar being generated and facilities being built. Their workbook does not allow you to analyze a project of any greater than 20 megawatts on solar. That is the arbitrary limit that they said, okay, which basically to me says, we don't think anyone's going to be looking at something that generates more than 20 megawatts. So if you go past schedules A and B, just to give you a sense of what this particular facility is generating right there on 872 megawatts. So it's significant right now. I'm glad that the board seems to be wanting to continue with our review. Definitely, I support that wholeheartedly. That we roll up our sleeves and do our usual analysis.
Well, to your point of, needing a formula so that everyone's clear moving forward, it was very obvious. I think we did have this discussion at the last meeting. Not like doing these one-year renewals doesn't seem to be really working. Like the library was struggling with their budget, the school was struggling with their budget. So I think the more clarity, we can put to this sooner rather than later, I think is really important for the town and its residents.
Yeah, I think that we had these renewals because this is a complex issue, right? And these are expensive modifications to the plan, and we needed a lot of time to kind of talk over how the pieces would fit together. And so I think we're at that
Government's
point.
changing, so,
Right.
right, that changes your whole industry really, right?
Right.
I imagine.
So,
Yeah.
so I think we're ready to move forward and take a deeper dive on this with the IDA, and hopefully we can, put something together that works for all, and we can move forward.
I don't have any more discussion on
Good discussion.
And the quick math is we need 4,300 acres of solar to replace this based on what, if you're looking at 20,
Yeah.
which is,
That's a lot of not
How big is your
trees.
yard?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm putting this on my roof, but this is not gonna,
Let's do it once a year, 24 hours a day.
and
What'd
right?
you say, Al?
If I could add too, as long as I've been involved with the agency as the CFO, the applicant, whether current name or the prior name, they're always incredibly compliant. Anything we ever needed, right on the spot. So, they've always been a very good, responsible project, and I can't imagine that will change.
Yeah, thank you, Al. And, Matt, since you're here, I've been trying to introduce the name, Bethlehem Energy Center. That suit your client?
Yes.
Easier than saying GB2?
Yeah, AlphaGen is the owner.
Yes.
So
And Generation Bridge is just the.
Cambridge is the project company that owns the asset.
So you lease
So
it.
it's just a special purpose entity.
Okay,
Yeah.
owned by AlphaGen.
Yes,
Okay.
AlphaGen's the mothership.
Okay.
So you need a motion to move forward with the application process? Is
Yes.
that-
Yep,
okay?
and
Happy to-
we'll get to the economic development
Yeah. further
one
down.
after this, yeah.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Georgette and then Dick.
Okay.
All in favor of moving the application into the analysis stage?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstaining or opposed? Okay, we resolved to move the application forward into analysis. Thank you. And that leaves the review and award of the contract for the economic impact analysis. And Kate has really led this. We have discussed at various times over the past year the importance of obtaining an objective third-party analysis to look at projects like this for us, to go into the economic impact in terms of jobs, wages, economic ripple effects, and we have discussed, and the board has wanted us to move forward in assembling a team of consultants who would do this kind of work. We were in the process of developing that when it became clear that this project was likely to come before the board. And so we accelerated that schedule just a little bit and we issued an RFP and invited proposals specifically for this project. And so Kate's going to talk about the responses and the work that's been done to come up with a recommended consultant.
Thank you. So we had 3 responses to the RFP, and Victoria and I did interview all 3 candidates. And ultimately, what it came down to was one in particular that had done similar IDA work, and also the quality. I had called the references that these organizations submitted with their application, and one ultimately stood out over the other. The prices were relatively the same. One was actually quite a bit higher, but it included some things that we didn't really need. So that really kind of accounted for the cost differential. So when it came down to it, we thought that the best company for this would be Silver Lode, and I did attach, just for your information, their proposal, which is attached, and a resolution as well to approve them being named as the consultant that we would use for the Bethlehem Center Energy Project.
Silver Lode is based in Ohio. As you read the proposal, they've done energy work. They are familiar with outside New York One of the reasons that I support this appointment is that they're really coming in and being an objective third party. Energy is sensitive in New York, and therefore the fact that they are entirely fresh is something that I felt was important for us to get that really clear, fresh, objective view.
And just to add to that, because that's a great point that I really wanted to mention, and I'm glad you did. Sometimes when you put RFPs out locally, because it's a small town, there's consultants that represent a lot of different folks, some with competing interests, some with political agendas, whatever the case may be. And so to Victoria's point, we felt that this applicant really had none of that, which was important to this. And they also had the energy experience, clean energy as well. So that's really where we came down on that. So it's an important point because in our town, conflicts can arise and things like that. So we really felt that there would be none here.
And I will say the other two respondents were also outstanding, not as good a fit for this particular project. It was a good exercise to meet other competent people, very good people who want to work with us. But this is really the one that Kate and I recommend. The fee that they propose for the analysis and report, which will include the economic impact and some fiscal analysis, is $14,750. It would include one virtual presentation. We're not going to ask them to fly here from Ohio for a project of this size. As we've discussed before, the project fee is paid by the applicant in any project. In this case, it will be paid by GB2, aka Bethlehem Energy, and then upon completion, regardless of how the board votes, the consultant is paid upon completion of the work. And Kate will handle contracting if the board approves this consultant.
Do they get paid by the applicant or do we get reimbursed by the applicant?
I think usually the way I've been doing it, maybe in the past it was done a little different, but usually the applicant just pays for it directly.
No,
No?
the applicant's going to pay us. We're going to
Because
pay
then we're
them.
the,
Okay.
Yeah, if
For
the
the
applicant pays them
contracts,
directly,
yes.
someone is going to believe that they're working for the applicant.
that's
Okay.
why I asked the question.
Okay.
And also, we will ask that that payment be made before we give the consultant the direction to begin work. We want to know that we have it.
On that, could you get an invoice
Yeah.
sent to me so I can get that?
Yep. And that arrangement, as I said, is really to make sure that it's clear to everyone who the consultant is working for.
Mhm.
There's no bias. Fine. I'm happy to make that motion.
Can I ask you a quick question
Yeah,
before we do that, Georgia? Just, I'm excited to do a cost, to be going, I'm excited for this bid to get cost benefit analysis. I'm a little surprised just that the location of the consultant, so that's just, the price seems right, so I'm fine with that. It was helpful to summarize that I appreciate the sort of discussion, or at least the analysis. Can you share a little bit more about the other bids in terms of amount? I know you said higher versus, one was significantly higher, and maybe approximate location.
Well, the two were local, the other two,
So yeah, local, like capital region,
Yes.
or like,
yes.
okay,
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
that's fine, yeah.
But there was significant potential for conflict of interest with both firms.
For this particular project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically for this one.
The flavor of which is because they've done business with the applicant, or they've done business with the town?
Neither. I think part of it too was they're currently representing other agencies locally. And the amount of work that's already on their plate, the turnaround time, all of that,
Yeah.
we considered. And so that's really how we wound up. I mean, at first I wasn't too crazy about an out-of-town consultant either, but at the end of the day, looking at the other two, not only did we believe this firm was most qualified, like if you took off, like you didn't know where,
Yeah, yeah.
and the cost, but, the potential to keep something like this confidential, which we needed to do up to a certain point, the other two applicants may not have been able to do that.
Okay.
And again, they were, very good firms.
Yeah.
As I don't know to what extent you're familiar with the economic development consulting world, there are not very many who can do a clean, straightforward, reliable economic impact analysis for around $15,000.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
low margin business. It
Right.
requires a great deal of expertise. So I was thrilled that we got 3 qualified, solid proposals.
What we'd like to do, and I think I'm comfortable enough saying this, when we put the RFP out, it was specific to this project.
Oh,
What we really would like to do again, when we will, Victoria and I discuss this, is we will go back out to bid to have a panel of ones to choose from. But this one in particular, I felt was a bit special based upon understanding the type of what we're doing here. It's complex. And
Yeah.
the whole tax analysis and the parties involved and all that, this particular firm had done that kind of work with clean energy type projects. So, I do believe they're doing a one New York project now, but it's escaping me. Like they're coming into
Yeah.
our area. But because we bid it specific to this, otherwise we could have really probably approved all 3. So my hope is that when we go back out, I'm going to reach out to the other 2 and say, can you just resubmit this, because we're going to be looking at a panel, and then all of you can say, we're going to name this panel, so that we can choose on a case-by-case basis.
yeah, and Victoria, I appreciate your knowledge in this area in particular. So, yeah, no, we can just, that's really helpful.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, the short of it.
We were partway through a motion.
Yeah, do you wanna-
Well, I think I already made it.
Mhm. And then-
Yeah, so it just needs to be
Second.
seconded.
I already seconded.
Okay.
We're
All
gonna
in
drop.
favor of awarding the contract to Silverload and having Kate reach out to them and begin the contracting process? Aye. Any abstaining or opposed? Okay, the motion passes to authorize Kate to give these good folks a call, get that contract and get the process started. You'll get an invoice, and this is certainly new for us. This is something we've wanted to do for a long time. But I think it's going to be exciting to have a complex project to look at with a lot of meat on its bones, and a firm that I think is going to be a real partner in helping us understand it.
Third question. Is that a GE power plant? The GE turbines in there?
I believe GE has a contract with them for operating and maintenance for at least a couple of the units, not all the units, and I believe the upgrade is a GE product.
Because when I was there, I think I toured that facility with GE.
Okay.
We were beginning to pitch brilliant factories to them. And that was going to be my job at that stage. Brilliant factories, which is basically based on a digital twin technology where you take sensors and put it throughout the whole machine.
Okay.
And forecast the machine so you can see real-time data and maintenance management schedule.
Yeah, well, maybe
And I
we want
think
another
that
tour.
plant was one of them.
Yeah, I think they partner with GE on a lot of their units, for the sort of thing you described.
Yeah, I believe that's the plant that I toured.
It'd be great to know where the service contract is and whether there's a,
It'd be out of schematic.
yeah, that'd be great information to have in the.
So, and the point I wanted to make with that was, I think as it pertains to the marketing committee, because this is such a big deal,
Mhm.
I think we should organize a meeting sometime soon to talk about
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was
Bunch of
hoping Chris would be here today because this is all going to come together. There's always a method to my madness. I think you all know that by now, but he wasn't feeling well this morning. So, but yeah, it's definitely on the list because as this moves forward, and hopefully when it's successful, we would, congratulate the applicant and do some,
Just,
Right, and the school district.
Well, and the business
Taxpayers,
review,
yeah,
I mean, the times, I mean, they're all gonna want to respond to these things.
just as a side, I think it's probably important that your client understands the diligence that went through to award this contract.
Yep.
And that it was taken very seriously.
Appreciate that.
All right, so one more order of business before adjournment. Kate, do we have anything under communications?
No, we do not.
Okay, then, are we ready for a motion to adjourn?
So our next meeting is on the 30th?
Yes, just note that because it's the fifth Friday, I think it's the
Right,
fifth
yeah.
Wednesday.
Fifth
Yes.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yep, so we'll start with a short finance committee meeting. It was an hour and a half ago. Dick said, please come with your wish list, especially marketing committee. And then we'll have the regular meeting following that.
Great meeting, everyone. Thanks for your patience with the agenda and all of that. This one was a big one. And there's some other things that, I'll bring up probably in April that could have been on the agenda, but, it was a lot to do today, so.
All right, so I will put forth the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, we have 2 seconds. We in fact have 5 seconds. Unanimous approval of the motion to adjourn?
Tell me when we're-
Yes. This meeting is adjourned at 9:51 on Wednesday, March 26th. Yes, it's still Wednesday, it's still March, but it's clearly warmed up and gotten brighter outside.